Watch has documented a number of human rights abuses that have been linked to World Bank projects. This includes, for example, the bank funding projects within drug detention centres in Vietnam where people are arbitrarily arrested and detained subject to forced labour, and when they refuse, then subjected to torture and other kinds of abuses. In Ethiopia, Yusuf touched on this, the World Bank has been funding the salaries of people who were working in a forced villagisation government project to relocate people from their traditional lands or their existing lands into new areas which were often infertile, having a whole range of social and economic rights impacts as well as violent abuses. And also in Uzbekistan, the World Bank is increasingly funding agriculture projects, despite the fact that there is a government system of forced labour within the cotton sector, and there's indirect support for that, and sometimes, unfortunately, direct support or forced labour and child labour within World Bank project areas. We've also been looking at considering this closing space for civil society around the globe. We've been looking at how this impacts World Bank projects and how the World Bank is responding. Last year we published a report which documented reprisals against critics of World Bank projects and looked at how the World Bank and the IFC, the private sector lending arm, have been responding. And we found that despite the attacks that the World Bank is well aware of around the globe, they've done very little and sometimes nothing at all to create a safe space for people to be able to participate in the projects that the bank is financing, or to speak out and criticise the bank when things do go wrong. We reached out to all of the complainants that we could identify who brought complaints to either the inspection panel or the compliance advisor ombudsman, the two independent accountability mechanisms that attempt to hold the World Bank and the IFC to account, and found that in over half of the cases where people responded to us, people believed that they had been subjected to some form of reprisal because of their activism around this particular World Bank or IFC finance project. And in most of those cases, people didn't report those abuses to the mechanisms because they thought that the mechanisms couldn't do anything about it. So in most of those cases, the World Bank and the IFC didn't even know that these reprisals had taken place. There was no monitoring mechanism in place for them to be able to identify and see what were the kinds of attacks that people who were complaining to them had been subject to. And in those cases where the World Bank was aware of the reprisals, or where we brought it to their attention, they did very little and sometimes nothing at all. It often involved quiet conversations behind closed doors with no impact. And when there was no impact, there wasn't an increasing response from the World Bank or the IFC. I want to point out that it wasn't always this way with the World Bank. There are several cases back when Jim Wolfenson was the president of the bank, where he took a very quick and effective response to arrests of people who'd been critical or who'd tried to engage with the bank. Actually, there was one case in Jakarta where 3 journalists were detained after he'd visited. He made a quick call and the journalists were released. Same again in Chad, where an opposition figure who also brought a case to the inspection panel was detained together with 5 other members of 5 other opposition figures. President Wolfenson made a quick call at the highest level to the president, and within hours these 6 were released, even though only one of them had a direct relationship to the World Bank. And in that case, they were very clear political figures as well. In another case in Cambodia, people were protesting and were subjected to arrest and abuse. Again, there was a quick and public response from the World Bank at a lower level than the president. But what we've seen in recent years is none of that at all, which really needs to change. Thank you.